Welcome to West Virginia Commonplace. I am your host, JR, West Virginia, and today's episode is entitled Lackluster or Lackluster. Now, terminologies, how we use words, they get different meanings when we use them in certain forms. So, the first terminology, lackluster, lacking in validity, force, conviction, uninspired or uninspiring. With this, I've had quite a few people, we're all in this podcast thing. They have very high ambition. They start off very strong, have all these convictions to do the right thing with their podcast, and then they slowly slow down and just stop and they pod fade. This is something that I've been reaching on in the last episode for pod fading. And lackluster is a judgment. Lackluster is someone saying that your effort is not that great. And that's a hard pill for any of us to swallow. I mean, even myself, because in certain things I do, someone may think that my effort is lackluster. And even I've been on the other end of this in the judgment. I've got colleagues and people that I deal with in podcasting. And when I say colleagues, I got tiers to people. I've got a group that have my phone number that can talk to me, and we go back and forth. Those are the people that it's a different kind of support. It's a different kind of talk with me. Those people, I'm definitely going to be harder on them than the associates or the affiliates, the people that dip and dive with me here and there. And in one case, sometimes you giving that kind of feedback and you never receiving that feedback back from people, um, that's a kind of weird. That's not being supportive because I want to know when I'm doing bad. I've got a few people in my corner that do that, and I have a few that just left my corner that didn't do that. But let's talk about this whole lackluster deal. Uninspiring. Charisma is something that you have to have in podcasting, and 9 times out of 10, um, you could get 10 shows under your belt. That's the number that I like to stay with. 10, 10, 9, whatever. You'll understand, and we're not talking statistics. We're just talking about flow of your show. Um, if you're truly a force, because some people just get behind the mic and, like I say, always they speak and it doesn't inspire. It's good self healing for themselves, but it doesn't help anybody else down the road. And when I say that, I'm not saying that in a judgmental way of saying, oh, that whatever you say doesn't help people, but I'm just saying, um, massively at that time, it's not helping anybody. It might help somebody later on. So I'll take that back and I'll say it in a nicer way. Now, uh, the conviction here, you have to have a strong belief that you are the best. And Uncle Dolomite, King Germ from Procast, and quite a few others, they show that in what they do. Even Bad Counsel, you can even watch certain podcasts, people that speak, but don't speak at the same time about how great they are in podcasting. These podcasts do not lack luster. Now let's move on to the terminology of luster. Now luster is this amazing. Uh, it's a gentle sheen or it's a soft glow on a reflective surface. So let's just say it for what it is. It's the shine. It is the part that makes your podcast a podcast. So when we use the term lackluster, you heard the different version, but then we use the term lack, put a space in between it, luster. I can wholeheartedly agree that some podcasts do lack luster. Didn't say their performance is lackluster, but I say they lack luster. Certain type of polish, certain type of shine to it. And some podcasts get it, some podcasts don't. And when you lackluster, you truly should be open to take criticism and merit from people that you believe have that luster, have that shine that you want to have. And when you don't do that, that's when people categorize your podcast as being lackluster. Because we can go on and talk about this and that and what makes a podcast great, what doesn't make a podcast great. But there's some simple formats here that you can just go with. Here's how your podcast is lacking luster. If you have a podcast you sit out here and you don't evolve your podcast. Those are the things that will make your show lackluster later. And everybody's show is always evolving, even though we keep the same segments and different stuff like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the mannerism in your episodes. For an example, this is a good one to go on. If you have a movie review podcast, there's only so many ways that you can review a movie without adding your own charm to it. Like you've got to have charismatic words, different type of wordplay that's going to draw people in. Because there's a million question and answer podcasts, but I have my phrases like Yao Ming in the paint, on point like Steve Nash, um, just a little vintage stuff that I do that I've made points that are part of what I do. Even though somebody else can do them, they're actually parts of what I do. And even with me asking questions a certain way, because we all ask questions, I try to ask these questions in a narrative uh, that follows like a storyline to a degree, so that when I'm making my podcast, it makes sense to people, and it's just not a tangent of me going on and on about things. That's where I got my luster. Where my podcast sometimes become lackluster is if I keep doing the same type of podcast, the same type of genre. If I have life coaches on, and I have 5 life coaches on, and I do them 5 weeks in a row, somebody's going to let me know that my podcast is lackluster. Each episode that I do, when we flip the term and we use lackluster, they're going to lose some shine there because I'm doing the same repetitive thing and I'm not giving my audience something different to engage. So in doing all that, it's just one of these deals where you have to, and once again, I'm going on the word play. Even with this episode, I'm taking the word lackluster and then I'm using lackluster at the same time to prove a point of wordplay and how your episode can be lackluster in its performance, and it can lackluster because of the content. So if you get that, then you understand where I'm coming from. If not, take some time, go back and play this one a little bit slower, and you'll get where I'm coming from. So when our show lacks shine, a lot of us tend to go look at other talent out there in podcasting and decide if something they're using is something that we can assimilate to what we're doing. And that's all fine and dandy because, like I said, that's part of the growth and that's part of being any type of content creator. Not every single little thing that we do is necessarily going to translate to success from other people. So, with that being said, we're going to dig even deeper into lacking this shine. Shine is a perception. We polish things. You know that from a kid. If you own a car or you own anything that you collect, you keep those things shiny. And the protective agents you use are cleaning agents or whatever you use, even if it's water and a rag or whatever you use to clean it. So taking that and using that same mindset, taking it inside podcasting and doing that, that's where your show will get its shine and will not be lackluster. Your performances are going to always be opinion based, so that's going to be something I will take from my listeners. Other podcasters can help you along the way when it comes to certain things, but at the end of the day, you really got to just decide that, hey, my podcast is going to be like this. I'll add in certain things if certain things happen that I don't like. Keeping your podcast in the purest form, and like everyone and all these gurus say, your authentic self. Keeping your podcast authentic, awesome. Um, and this is not one of these podcasts that I'm doing to grab people in to talk about monetization or anything like that. I'm just talking about genuine quality inside your podcast. When you don't do these things, that's when both of those lackluster terminologies come into play. And then you have to figure out what to do, how to do it, when to do it. And outside of that, I want to thank you all for listening to this podcast. This was just like a little quick one I was throwing out there because I wanted to show, how you can do wordplay and stuff like that. And you can make a podcast with it. You can easily go through, look up some words, just like I did with terminologies that I use every day, lackluster and lackluster, and you can see where they're two different meanings and they mean two different things. So I've made a whole episode about breaking up a word and then using the word in two different ways to give meaning and to give thought into how lackluster and lackluster play into podcasting. Once again, I'm JR from West Virginia Uncommonplace. Check us out at wvuncommonplace.com. Tune in, join the mailing list. We will have a bunch of different things going on throughout the summer. Sometimes cinema's jumping off, and a few little collaborations here and there. Going forward, it's going to be more of the narrative about what other people's stories are. So once again, I want to thank you guys for listening and have a good day.